Hello lovelies, and welcome to this week's video. It's been almost 2 years since I did a video on empaths and relationships, but this topic seemed to be a topic of interest to a few people, so I am going to be talking about empaths and heartbreak. Now, as we know, empaths feel emotions of their own to a higher extent, as well as feel other people's emotions, or at least an idea of what is going on, and they take it on themselves. So keeping that in mind, also remember that empaths tend to attract what some may call energy vampires or psychic vampires, aka narcissists or sociopaths, and they also can attract more on average than the average person, addicts or otherwise unstable, like severely chronically unstable people who may also be manipulative or even severely abusive. Empaths have this feeling that they can hopefully help lead them on the right way and make them a better person and change them, and we can see the person that they are deep inside, or if they are a narcissist or sociopath, psychic vampire, whatever, the person that person wants us to see, because we can't really feel anything if they don't have anything for us to feel. So not all empaths are fully aware or fully accept this about themselves, but for the most part, we know. We just don't consciously want to accept it. We still maintain this hope through numerous lies, through abuse, through not all types of, you know what I mean, just like gaslighting, things like that, lies, cheating, and feel that something is wrong. We might stay through a good portion of it. Not all of it, but through a good portion of it, or think that maybe we can just work things out, or they're gonna get better, I just will wait for it. So we basically want to help those that are wounded, and not only that, we also attract that. And even if we decide we don't want that anymore, we want somebody that's stable and can create a good environment, we still more often attract that, and that may lead us to then eventually be a little isolated. But as for the heartbreak, now putting these two things out there again as a reminder, it's late. When an empath feels heartbreak and is heartbroken, it feels like the literal end of the world. And some people might think that we're being melodramatic or we're being hysterical, but we really feel like everything inside of us is falling apart. And that may put us into isolation from the world. Because you have to think about it, we have given a lot, most likely, to this relationship. We have a connection with somebody, and compared to the average person, when we have a connection to somebody, we're literally connected. We feel everything that they feel. We put everything we can into it, no matter how short-lived it is, whether it's a friendship or a relationship or a family member. I mean, a good example is I recently had a family member die that most of my family just cut out, and forever I felt bad about it, but I knew how horrible they were. But I still felt a lot of guilt, and I wanted them to meet my child. I wanted all these things, and then they ended up being dead, and I couldn't handle it. Everyone else was talking about all the things that happened to them, and for me it was like, I'm not denying what you went through, and I'm feeling like everything that's going on with both sides, because you're so trying to like give people the benefit of the doubt no matter what. And that's true with the relationship. So with the heartbreak, there's so many things going on in our head. We may start thinking about how the person is just not healthy, or if they got help, or if we could have done more. We think of any situation that we could have done that would have changed things. And yes, every person thinks about certain things like this, and to a certain extent, but the way that the empath feels about it and thinks about it, they put a lot on themselves, and they feel it to a whole nother level, and that's why it feels like somebody just died in their lives. if they, let's say we're dating someone for 6-7 months and we're seeing them every day, and you're like, okay, you knew this person was crap, you knew all this, why are you like this bad? And you may not say that to them, but you might be thinking it. It's because of how much they're taking on. Because they literally feel as if they're dying. They want to help everyone, and they tend to forget themselves in the process. We ourselves tend to be wounded as empaths. I mean, think about it. If you're an extremely sensitive person, you're probably going to be wounded. And a lot of people become extremely empathetic later on because of their wounds, and their gift kind of comes out. So each heartbreak leaves us with more and more pain and more wounds, especially if it's somebody that we really were connected to on more than just that basic we're an empath thing, but we really had like so much in common. We got along really well when things were good. Like, it just didn't make sense, and you looked past everything. So it leads them to have extreme depression and anxiety, and some may get suicidal, some may think they need to be institutionalized. And you also have to keep in mind the type of people that empaths often attract, not all the time, just often, that there can be narcissistic abuse syndrome, there can be abuse in general, there can be that whole manipulation, gaslighting effect on them. So they're left in this whole new world, and their brains have been fucked with. Then add in that they're an empath who feels so much. So a lot of empaths I know personally have wanted, or some have gone and either gotten treatment or they went and got hospitalized. There are various ways a heartbroken empath may react. Some taking advantage of their gift, or who have been there through enough times and try and protect themselves from the negative as hard as they can, as well as are fixing their own wounds, may not get to the same extent, and they might feel that same level, but they may find coping mechanisms and be using mindfulness techniques and protection and all that kind of stuff to not show it to the world and try and go on with their life day to day while still inside be breaking inside. But typically, if you haven't fully dealt with everything, or you aren't doing any of these coping skills or good things for us to be using as empaths, you can create codependency or something similar to codependency or dependency, gain abandonment issues, etc. And this heartbreak for those particular empaths can be even worse. You not only feel like you're dying, but that you lost half of you. And yes, a lot of people who go through breakups feel like they lost a part of them, and that's normal. But we have to keep in mind those things that I stated in the beginning and put out there on purpose, those two main things about empaths, about who they attract and how sensitive they are, that is just amplified. It's like they literally lost half of them. You don't feel like you deserve love. In both cases of the different ways that an empath may respond, they may feel that way and may have felt that way going into the relationship, that they don't deserve love, so they have to like work for love. But that's not always the case. But you might now feel that way, especially again because of who you bring in. You might be bringing in, and you may feel as if you may never be whole again, or will never love again, or have a love so intense or as great again. But all of this does not mean there is something severely wrong with you. You just feel more, a lot more. And like I said, even friendships ending hurt and break empaths' hearts. Sometimes empaths tend to give up on love after a few of these type of heartbreaks because they just no longer can handle that pain. And that's kind of where the isolation kind of goes in. Even talking about your heartbreak to an empath, if you are not an empath and you're talking to a friend who's an empath, can cause them pain, and they tend to go down the rabbit hole of like anxiety and depression, or have to deal with having to put some healing and protection on themselves to recover, or it might trigger certain things that have happened to them. And they probably won't tell you because they are empaths and they're trying to be there for their friend. Empaths often are the ones who may need to read articles, books, or watch videos about how to get over and let someone go. That's typically what these things are made for. That is the audience, are these people that have like anxiety and depression and PTSD, empaths, highly sensitive people. And sometimes they look for things on how to win them back, how we can get them back. And the latter can occur even if they know it was bad and toxic, but they just can't handle the pain of the breakup. Empaths get what's called compassion fatigue in general in life. So now add in being torn apart from someone they spent so much time around and used a lot of their gifts and energy on, and may have just gotten said fatigue just being with the person, even for a short period in the relationship. They got that way. And that's even more amplified when it's with somebody that's like a psychic vampire or a narcissist, or is in general very toxic. After that, the empath is going to look numb. They may talk about the breakup nonstop, or they just may not be. And that's not the same as numb. There's a difference between being apathetic and seeming empty versus being numb. The numb typically comes with like narcissistic abuse syndrome, or like a severe toxic situation that the empath just got blown out of the water, that it even ended. And yeah, in some cases the empath will be the one breaking up with someone. Of course, they aren't always the one being broken up with, but don't think it's not as difficult as being broken up with. This probably was a very hard decision for the empath, and they are in a lot of pain. They may have anger along with it because of everything that they put up with, and more than they should have, but they still become worn out. They still might get suicidal. They still might get like they're feeling like they're dying and they're in bed. And in some cases, they might even be worse if they're the ones that broke up with someone else as an empath. And worn, drained, and filled with pain. They may try and numb the self to not feel it, especially if they want to come off looking like they're strong and not weak, because they have to make sure that they don't go back. They may have just become so broken and heartbroken during the relationship that they couldn't take it anymore, that they had to, they knew it was what was best for them. The worst thing for an empath is the limbo within a relationship. This is basically where there was somebody who has loved them or is still in love with them, but they don't know what they want. And especially because we attract people that if they're not narcissists, they might be unstable or addicts. They can't always be fully rational or aware of what they truly want, because if you're not working on yourself and are unstable, you really can't make up your minds. And that's, here I'm getting empathetic, but also from a counseling standpoint, that's not necessarily like anything on you, the empath, or on them, but in some situations people just can't like be one or the other. And whatever the case may be that puts you in this limbo position, or if there's just games being played in general, which often is the case with the type of people that empaths tend to attract, that position can be the worst for the empath. Worse than just being in the bad situation, worse than being broken up with, worse than breaking up with someone. This is when you can also see the most negative qualities of an empath even come out. And they're going to be feeling unwanted, or feeling the other's energy, whether it's through the tone in a phone or their presence in person, and that will tear them to shreds. And though they fear the heartbreak of the loss part of them just wants it to either end or get better. But the other part of them doesn't want the end because they don't want to have to face the pain that they know they'll feel during a heartbreak. But they also just can't continue being in this limbo. They hold on and on, hoping things return to the way they may have once been, or the illusion they might have been. Or for the other person to just cut the cord and release them broken. And you may be like, well, why don't they just end it? Because if it was something, when an empath is invested in something, again, as I said, when an empath breaks up with someone, it's the hardest decision they ever have to make. And if they're at a point where they're willing to stick in this limbo position for a while, there's various things that could be going on, whether it be manipulation and, gaslighting and all these other things, or putting someone on a string, or it just being that you put so much work into it that you don't want it, or just the fear of the pain of the heartbreak or what's gonna come. It doesn't matter what the reason is. The point is empaths are the type of people that tend to stay in that limbo with somebody and put up with things that other people may not. They basically are fearing for what they may become if it ends, what they themselves may become after dealing with so much pain, because that limbo creates pain, because you're in a situation you don't know what's going on, you don't know where it's going to go. They wonder, will they be able to trust anyone again? Will they be just getting hurt by somebody again if they put themselves out there? Will they find someone who understands their hypersensitivity and that they have wounds too? And of course, these are things that they think once they go through the heartbreak, that's not limbo, but actually a breakup as well. Will they find someone who understands their hypersensitivity and the wounds they have as well? Or will they continue going to wounded birds and narcissistic psychic vampires and the cycle keep continuing? In the future, I will make a video about what to do during heartbreak, whether it is being actually broken up or in the limbo, doesn't matter, heartbreak. And the different things that you can do to cope with it so it's not as severe. But this is just about what it looks like. And I repeated some things on purpose for people who may not be empaths, but are maybe dating somebody that's an empath or whatever, because they're trying to figure out like why their partner has so much pain in this new relationship, for example. Like, there have been times where either myself or people I know who are empaths would get in new relationships and their partners wouldn't understand like why they might be a little anxious about certain things. And that's like a PTSD thing, and it's also an empath thing, and empaths tend to get PTSD at a higher level. They're more predisposed. So, I remember, this isn't a video about all empaths, but empaths in general. And even those of us who work with our gift and care for it can get like this. And many people get confused who are on the outside. Why people they see for guidance or go to for advice or see as being strong, independent people can get in certain situations or feel so much and not take their own advice. But this is essentially the biggest struggle of the empath. Being able to give the advice, being able to see what's going on with somebody else's, because we can feel, we can sense, we can analyze and observe a lot more than the average person. But when it comes to our own, that same exact thing bites us in the butt, so to speak. So next week's video will be a goddess video associated with Mabon, and thanks for watching. Love you all, and see you next time. Blessed be.